Viewers, today we are going to talk about research. And research entails the process of trying to get a solution to a problem. Research is scientific, and therefore it has several conventional approaches. One of the most popular approaches is the quantitative approach. This is where we administer self-administered questionnaires. We administer questionnaires to correct data related to numbers. Here we want to find out what is the number of these people, or percentage of these people, or the size or the length. So here we are dealing with figures, numbers. And as I have just said, we collect data through questionnaires. The other approach is qualitative approach, which implies that we get data through interviews. We interview people to get the information, in-depth information that we need. And it could be in form of focus group or self-administered questionnaires. No, I'm not talking about self-administered questionnaires, but interviews. And normally we use interview guides to help us correct this data systematically. Now, the third approach is what we call the mixed methods, and it combines both qualitative and quantitative. So you conduct a study by administering questionnaires, and also you conduct interviews. So the data you get is supposed to complement each other. So we have just seen the three approaches, which is quantitative, qualitative, and the mixed methods. Now, if we look at the content of research, we normally have chapter 1, which entails the background of the study. The background of the study entails the researcher describing the problem. So you tell us how the issue is, and we normally look at it from global perspective, regional perspective, and then national. So we start from a broader perspective and we narrow down all the way to the local perspective. In that chapter 1, we also have the statement of the problem, whereby you literally tell us what is the problem. You are supposed to begin with an ideal situation, how the situation is supposed to be, but now how the situation is, and you show the problem clearly, and you may have to cite other studies to show what the problem is, or what others were able to discover but still left out a gap that needs to be tackled by your study. After the statement of the problem, we have the objectives of the study. So this one helps us to narrow down the research to what specifically we want to measure. And those variables that appears in your objectives are also the same that appears on your research questions. They also appear in your conceptual framework, and they are the ones that when you go to chapter 2 you are going to review. And when you are drafting your questionnaire, those same objectives are the ones that you are going to ask questions around those objectives. So for instance, each objective should have at least 11 questions so that you are able to comprehensive frame, ask all the necessary questions. So we are still in chapter 1, so we have looked at the objectives. Now we go down to research questions, which are basically the same as research objectives, but this time you reframe them into questions, like to what extent does this cause this? The variables that you are going to measure, you mention them. If you had 4 objectives, make sure the questions are 4. After the research questions, we also have the significance of the study, where you tell us the importance of the study. Sometimes when we are doing both the proposal and the actual study, we may begin with the justification instead of significance. So you tell us, why are you conducting this study? Then we also have scope and delimitation of the study. Scope, we are strictly limiting our subject area of importance to what the topic is all about. So you may have to repeat what the topic is. We want to see the depth of your topic or what you intend to cover. For delimitation, we basically mean the geographical area where the study is going to take place. Now we are done with scope and delimitation. We come to conceptual framework. The conceptual framework is basically a diagram where you draw on your left hand side. You could have the independent variables, and those are basically your objectives. On your right hand side, you have the dependent variables, the end result, and somewhere in the middle or at the bottom you could have intervening variables, things that could intervene and change the situation in the dependent variable. After the conceptual framework, we also have the theoretical framework, and this is all about the theory. The theory under which you are going to underpin your study. The theory must be related to your study, and under theory, you should tell us who is the founder or who founded the theory, maybe which year, and what it entails, what does it say. So show us how it is related to your study. Show the strength of the theory and the weaknesses, and how both how the weaknesses can be overcome. We also have operational definition of key terms. These are the key terms that are going to be used in the study. And in most cases, you look at your objectives. You can pick your keywords from there. The most important thing to note about operational definition of key terms is that they should not be defined the way they are defined from a dictionary, but they should be defined according to how you are going to use them in the study. You also need to alphabetize them. So the keywords should appear in an alphabetical order. Now from there, we look at what happens in chapter 2, which basically is the review of related literature. Here, some other people will tackle the theories here and then embark on the review of related literature. We've just mentioned about the theoretical framework, so we are not going to repeat them here. So here we pick our subtopics from the objectives. So we are going to review those objectives or those variables from the objectives. And here we look at what other researchers have said about our topic. The key elements that need to be captured here are the author of the work that you are citing or you are reviewing, the year when the work was done, the topic that was done, and the country where it took place. After that, you also need to tell us the methodology that was used in that particular study. You can tell us the design of the study, the sample size, the target population, and then the findings. What did that study find? Then, after telling us the findings, you also need to show us how important those findings are to your study. And after that, you also need to tell us what the other study left out in terms of knowledge gap or literature gap, so that your study is seen to be trying to fill in that particular gap that was left out by the other studies. And the gaps could be in form of several ways. One could be the methodology. Maybe your study is quantitative, while this particular one is qualitative. So that's a gap. If the study that you are reviewing is a mixed method or used to mixed method approach, and yours is quantitative, that's a gap. The other one is contextual, where if maybe the study that you are reviewing was undertaken in a university, while your own is being undertaken in a secondary school, then that's a literature gap. The gap could also be in terms of geographical differences. For instance, if your study is being carried out in Kenya and the one you are reviewing was carried out in Nigeria or Malaysia, that geographical difference is a gap. Yeah, so now every objective has to be reviewed using those past studies and They need to be current studies, in most cases not more than 5 years old. And each objective, you may review like 4 studies from different areas, beginning with the global, regional, or national and local. So for each specific objective. And then you need to have a summary of the reviewed literature, where now you summarize the entire review. Now, from the chapter 2, we go to chapter 3, which is normally methodology. Methodology, this is where you tell us the methods that you're going to use. The methods could be in terms of design. What is a design? And remember, each approach, quantitative has its own design. The most popular one is descriptive survey design, and there are several of them. The qualitative has its own. There are several of them, such as the phenomenology. Then you also need to indicate the target population, the entire population. What was the entire population, or what is the entire population that you're going to study? From there, you need to tell us the sample size. The sample size is gotten from the target population, and you need also to tell us the methods that are used to arrive at the sample that you're going to study. Remember, sometimes it's not easy to study the entire population, but the sample that you pick has to be representative enough for purposes of generalizing your study. There is also the data correction methods, and they could be many. Some of them, the most popular ones, we have just indicated: the questionnaires, the interviews, the focus group methods, documentation analysis, observation, among others. There's also the ethical, the ethical issues that you need to address, and the data analysis methods that you're going to undertake in order to get the results. You analyze the raw data to get the actual results or answers that you're looking for. From there, you go to chapter 4, which is all about data analysis. This is where now you analyze your data and you present it in terms of maybe graphs, charts, text. Then chapter 5 is where you conclude the study and you give recommendations. Thank you.